Well, hello and welcome. Has Ghana lost its reputation amongst the Committee of Nations? And why do we ask this big question this evening? I'm sure recently you heard in the news when the British High Commissioner indeed wrote to the Speaker of Parliament, a letter dated 20th January 2017, to complain about 4 MPs, three in the House, one former, who applied for visas for their spouses and children, traveled, and their spouses and children never came. They indeed overstayed. So the High Commissioner obviously was appealing to the Speaker to, I don't know, maybe reprimand them, put his foot down. And those who were mentioned, their punishment were levied to say, look, for the next 10 years, you cannot even apply for a visa. And so there's so many school of thought on this matter. Those who think that, well, it was a crime. Those who think, well, the persons with whom the visas were applied for were over 18, and so maybe they're on their own. One then says, I think guaranteed for them. How then does one even get a diplomatic passport? Everyone in Ghana now seems to, have one connection or the other, attain a diplomatic passport, and then you can have certain favors. But going forward, how do we deal with this? Is it corruption? Is it just a normal procedure that you and I can take? Just go to the embassy and apply for a visa for whoever we want to travel with. But once you travel with the person, if the person is over 18, I don't know what the law says, but are you responsible to chain the person and drag them back home? That's the issue on board. But on the larger picture, is Ghana being bullied diplomatically because of our backward economic status? Quote unquote, we are a poor country and therefore we are being bullied diplomatically. Is that what is happening? Well, my guest tonight will trash this issue out. My name is Nana Sakwa, the 4th Chief of Akwamu Edumasa and your favorite TV show host. Don't go. When I come back, I'll introduce my guest. Well, thank you very much for staying. Has Ghana lost its reputation amongst the Committee of Nations? And with me in the studio is the AU chairperson, the African Union Advisory Board on Corruption chairperson, no other than our own Daniel Batidam. Yes, our own Daniel Batidam is now running affairs on the whole of the continent. You're welcome.
Thank you, Nana. And good to see you.
Good to see you too. Well, double welcome. Welcome home and welcome to the show.
Yeah. The show is always my home as well. So.
Good.
Thank you, Nana.
I really don't know what to start with, but because it's you, let me just ask, is it corruption that these persons, MPs, took their spouses and children abroad and returned without them? They have diplomatic passports. So, is it corruption?
I think, thank you, Nana, and good evening to your viewers. I thought this evening we were going to avoid that word and talk about something else. Also, because these days I find myself somehow in the diplomatic community by default. Because of the African Union, and I also happen to hold a diplomatic passport.
Then you have to take me with you.
Yeah, we already agreed on that.
I promise to come back.
Yes. Oh, you will definitely come back. Your people need you. More importantly. But on a more serious note, I think there is more to it than diplomacy. And international relations. There is also politics in all these issues. And for me, as a Ghanaian, first of all, it saddens me. It saddens me that to date, so many of our citizens seems to be craving to travel out to places they have no idea about, but believe, or I'm made to believe that there are greener pastures there. I'm sure you know much more than myself and many other Ghanaians that, as a matter of fact, there are hardly any greener pastures anywhere else, perhaps, than this place we call home. Be that as it may, there is a general perception out there that when you are out, when you get out somewhere else, you will, there is milk and honey flowing there. So, first of all, to begin with, citizens, especially African citizens, and I cannot run away from looking at the broader picture at the African continental level because of the pictures, the gory pictures we see daily about how our compatriots from Ghana and other African countries are struggling to get across the seas, the high seas, very dangerous terrain, because they believe that there is something better there. But I think it becomes then more serious when people in honorable, privileged positions like our members of parliament, political leaders, and other government officials or public officials are seen to be using any and all methods to send friends, relatives, and so on abroad. And you ask yourself, what are they telling their people? Especially when you talk about members of parliament. They are representatives of people, constituencies. You are a chief. You are, I think, even more than an MP in terms of the people you represent. So if your people were to see you using all kinds of means to send those closer to you out of the country, whilst you say you are a chief to serve their needs, to uphold their beliefs, customs,
living so standards.
Living standards and all that, then you begin to ask what has happened to us? What has happened to our representatives? And I think that is the broader context in which I would like to look at this. But of course, we are in a global system. I wouldn't call it a village as yet, but we are in a global system where all of us may want to move to where life can be easier and better. But there are legitimate, legal, and proper ways to do that. There are also all kinds of other ways. The question is, when elected officials, members of parliament, honorable people are being addressed the way and manner in which my not so good friend John Benjamin of the United Kingdom has addressed our Speaker of Parliament. And I hope we can have some time to learn from those who know better about international relations and diplomacy. As if he was reporting some delinquent
the talkatives say when you're not in class
from his house and saying, well, Mr. Speaker, I have taken note of a speech you made at some place at which you said the members of your house must recognize and consider the diplomatic passport as a whole as a privilege and that they must not abuse it and all that. I think that foundation upon which the British High Commissioner, John Benjamin, went on to address our Speaker of Parliament, I have issues with it. I have issues with it not because I think it is not necessarily the right way to go, but I'm wondering whether that then tells us that whenever somebody, especially a public official, happens to commit a crime or be involved in some wrongdoing, that person has to be addressed through the institution that he or she belongs to. In this case, you are talking of parliamentarians who are, and there are some strong words, if the letter I have seen is anything to go by.
Okay, I'll take
talking about visa fraud, there are some strong words also relating to possibly what may be termed criminal conduct. And I am saying to myself, well, this is serious. So if the representative of the British government in Ghana is addressing the head of one of the important arms of government, the Speaker of our Parliament, and more or less reporting members of his house, past, mostly past, because I think the members, the four members...
one was passed and 3 are still in the house, but I want you to hold on there. I'm going to take a quick break and then we'll come back and continue on that. Well, thank you very much for staying, and we're discussing the all-important topic: has Ghana lost its reputation amongst Committee of Nations? And I was already in the studio with Mr. Daniel Batidam, but now joining us, guess who? Man who knows all about international relationship, Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso, Director, Dean, Academic Affairs, Ghana Armed Forces Command and Staff College. Plenty things, but we didn't have enough space on the paper, and so many other things. Doc, you're welcome.
Thank you so much. It's been a long time.
Yes. But Mr. you were in full flight when I stopped you, and I think we got to the place where you felt it was as if they were being reported as little children who played truants.
Yeah.
And you wanted to continue.
Well, I now that my professor and lecturer is here, I'll be more guarded in the way I speak. But the point I was making essentially is that I asked more questions than I had answers to about the very approach to the whole thing. I mean, when I read it, the letter that was widely circulated, it talked about the fact that the basis, it gave me the impression that the basis upon which the High Commissioner was addressing this particular issue to the Speaker of our Parliament was because our Speaker had said something to the effect that members of the House must consider diplomatic passports as a privilege and they must not abuse them and so on and so forth. And for that matter, he was drawing their attention. Me, I'm just a public policy student. I don't know.
Let me just read just a little excerpt of the said letter. And it says, Dear Mr. Speaker, the British High Commission would like in confidence to bring the following matters to your attention regarding the apparent involvement of 3 serving MPs and 1 former MP in visa fraud directly affecting the United Kingdom. And then he goes on to say, in doing so, we note the powerful words in your impressive inaugural address as Speaker to the effect that for members of Parliament holding a diplomatic passport is both a privilege and responsibility which should not be abused, and that those who abuse that trust would be appropriately dealt with.
Yes, exactly where I was. That those who abuse that trust.
Oh, yeah.
And the point I was trying to make without cutting you short is that, the High Commissioner is saying, well, you have said this at this point, and you said it so strongly that I want to draw your attention to acts that fall within what you have said. This was on 20th of January, barely 2 weeks after the new Speaker and Parliament had been sworn in. And I am asking questions like, is this a public policy issue? Is this an issue of diplomacy? Is this an issue of international relations? Whatever it is it because these holders of diplomatic passports happen to be members of Parliament that the Honorable High Commissioner was addressing the Speaker? But beyond that, at the end of the letter that you started reading, he says, I'm copying this letter to the Minister Designate for Foreign Affairs, the Minister for National Security, the Protocol Department of Parliament, and all that, and other embassies, and more or less saying, I want the whole world to know that this is the kind of conduct some members of that August House. I hope people who know better can help us with some answers, because the words visa fraud are very clear, and I'm sure there is a definition of what visa fraud is. But if you went on to read the individual cases, it was about people coming to collect visas using their diplomatic passports, traveling overseas, and perhaps ending up in different circumstances that were not foreseen. I know, and you know, that when we are issued visas, whether in diplomatic passports or any other passports, they tell you that the visa you receive is not a guarantee of entry into the country. So I don't know where the visa fraud comes in. At what point is it a visa fraud? To be given a visa, you travel outside, and then maybe the people or persons you travel with happen to stay longer than the period they were originally said to be staying. Maybe then being categorized as illegal residents and so on and so forth. But I wanted to draw attention to something. I sincerely think that we need to be, and I took the reaction that came following the thing by us as Ghanaians. For me, that is even more what is important. Like, all kinds of things were made out of it. But I have questions, and I think questions ought to be raised about the essence of addressing a speaker of an August House like Parliament, an important arm of our government, 2 weeks after taking office, and saying, well, this kind of thing is going on. There have been other issues relating to visas by Ghanaian citizens, people paying high prices for visas and not being granted, which is an important issue. And I think that is also very important for as a Ghanaian. And attention of the British government through the High Commission has been drawn to it.
I wanted you to quote what...
yes, but one of the things I mentioned had to do with relatives, getting things for relatives. And I was trying to bring that point, maybe to give some background to it, because I spoke off record. I was saying that doing things for relatives is not something new. And I wanted to quote David Cameron, the former British Prime Minister, who last year, April, shortly after the Panama Papers, when he found himself alleged to have had issues being raised relating to his father. He said this, and I quote, it was on 11th April 2016 when he was addressing the House of Commons. He said, and I quote, "Far from people being embarrassed about passing things to their children, like wanting to keep a family home within the family, I believe it is a natural human instinct and something that should be encouraged." He continues, and I quote, "Many parents want to help their children when they buy their first car, get a deposit for their first home, or face the cost of starting a family." He continues, and I quote, "It is entirely natural that parents should want to do these things. And again, it's something that we should not just defend, but proudly support." I took this quotation within the context of something he said had been associated with him because of his father, who had been named in the Panama Papers. And I took it to say that even if you brought it to the African context, it may even be more necessary because encouraged. For us, it is a moral duty to be responsible. We could go into the details of the other things, but what I wanted to raise is that I hope that some of our development partners, be they diplomatic, development or whatever, do not take advantage of some of the kind of politics we play in Ghana, in Africa, to continue creating some kind of mess which undermines the very institutions that all of us say must be strengthened in order that democracy prevails. Because, for instance, if a number of MPs, and I'm not defending any wrongdoing whatsoever by those individuals, in their personal and private capacities, come for visas, which are issued to them on the basis of merit. Because, for instance, I know that it was only around 2009 that MPs made a case to be given diplomatic passports. Before then, they were not having some. And usually when you are giving a diplomatic passport, it's clear the way in which you use it. I hold an African Union diplomatic passport. If I have a spouse or somebody that would usually travel with me, I am compelled to complete the details of that person so that when we are traveling, I don't even need to say that this is this fellow or that fellow. And it is not everybody you can use to travel on. Besides, there are the protocol officers in the ministries, departments, and agencies, and also, I believe, in Parliament, whose responsibility it is to liaise with these diplomatic missions. So the point I want to make is that the responsibilities must be properly distributed. It is not enough to just say that some Ghanaian MPs have traveled to UK with all kinds of relatives. And let me be clear, some of the things I read are...
Daniel, if I don't bring doctor in, the show will end.
Oh.
Some of the things I read are a bit sarcastic. Some of them, I think, are not so diplomatic, although I say I don't know much about diplomacy. And I think that they tend to treat us as a people. Exactly. And I think Ghanaians must recognize that it's not every time we should be talking about NDC and NPP. The MPs who have been listed are from across board. Yes. And the statement even says that in the, I would like you to deal with, well, please, let us have a certain understanding of the way we want
Doctor, so
us to relate with our neighbors.
To you that, are we being bullied diplomatically?
I don't think so. If we understand diplomacy, it's the use of intelligence and tact to force your opponent. Let me use the word advice, to force your opponents to do your bidding in the interest of your nation. So it's both tact and intelligence. And in intelligence, all tools in the toolbox are used. Intimidation, coercion, tact in the form of, So let us assume that the British High Commission or the British government has seen a certain trend which they are not happy with. They can use all kinds of tactics in diplomacy and see your reaction. So whilst many people are talking so much, I'm saying, look, that is the method he decided to use. That is the method. People are saying he leaked the whole thing out whilst he was talking to the speaker, for example. If he did, then it was a ploy, one of the diplomatic ploys. If he didn't, or he tacitly leaked it to a journalist so that most of us will hear what is going on, it is also a ploy. In diplomacy, you use all tools in the toolbox, short of war. And even in our field, war is the continuation of diplomacy. That is, diplomacy has failed. You take the gun. So I don't believe we were being bullied. He used a tactic and he wanted an effect. Whether that effect has been achieved or not, I mean, that's what diplomats do. Tact, intelligence, coercion, any kind of thing you would use to achieve your end without necessarily engendering war. So for me, as my brother is lamenting, I see the man having done his work, and maybe as we lament and fighting ourselves and doing this, he's laughing because he may have gotten the results he wants.
But see, the people will say it wouldn't happen in Nigeria because Nigeria will not, take this sitting down.
No, it can happen in Nigeria, but the point is that in diplomacy, monkeys play by their sizes, and you play by the hierarchies and that kind of thing. You look at it before. He may not throw this in Nigeria, but he can throw it in Ghana. Nigeria may retaliate. Ghana may not be able to retaliate. So yes, he wouldn't do that in Nigeria. He might do it in Albania. He may do it in Ghana. So let's understand it that way. But the bottom line is, what is the use of a diplomatic passport? Why did the parliamentarians fight to get themselves enlisted into the realm of those having the right to hold a diplomatic passport? And what does that mean? It means a lot. So we rather, whilst we are lamenting the situation, we must also check ourselves and ask ourselves. Because ordinarily, those of us not holding diplomatic passport, we do what the man is talking about. You take your relative there because you're a big man or that sort of thing, you make your way and you get a visa for somebody who ordinarily may not have gotten a visa. He may call that visa fraud. You know, that's what he has labeled it. You got to prove that it's not, one way or the other. So ordinarily, we've been doing this. And there are several instances. And note, I think this is an eye-opener because quite recently, I don't know, I've forgotten the paper. I was looking for that paper. My children at times hear some of these things. There was a white man, I think he's a Russian or so, who was caught with a Ghanaian diplomatic passport. It was in our papers. Ghanaian diplomatic passport. Come on, give me a break. You know? Now this Nayele thing, when it came, this is a woman traveling on an Austrian passport and allegedly flashing, allegedly, I use my words advice, allegedly flashing a Ghanaian diplomatic passport because every type of criminal that way knows the essence of a diplomatic passport. The Vienna Convention, 61.
Yes, I was going to say, what privilege?
Exactly, that's what I was coming to. The UN Security Council resolution in 1959 saw that we need to codify some of the customary international laws that are already existing, that diplomats are respected and that kind of thing. So from then on, the conference was held in 61. By 64, it had become codified law. I mean, more than 51 countries had appended their signature. It came into effect. Today, 189 countries subscribe to it, ratified. What does it mean? It gives you total immunity. Look, you can kill under you have a diplomatic passport, you kill. The only thing is that they report to your government. If they want to, they ask for your government to waive the diplomatic immunity, then they can try you there. We have a famous case, the Bene case in Ghana, for example. With his diplomatic passport, we saw hide all that he used the diplomatic passport for. So the Swiss government said, please, Mr. Ghana government, make him an ordinary person so that we can try him. We didn't. Because with it, you are immune. If you check the diplomatic offenses on the net right now, you see Nigeria, which other country? Most of the offenses are ticketing, how they drive. And all they do is to send the bill to your embassy. If you like, you pay. If you don't like, you don't pay. And the last count, some embassies owe about 53 million in the United States. So diplomatic passport gives you serious immunity and passage, easy passage. First is that the territory of an embassy is non-violable. The territory of the American embassy here does not belong to Ghana. It's part of the American soil. That's the first diplomatic kind of thing. Your premises are, and then communication. If the American government want to send something from Ghana, we have no right to impede that process. So diplomatic bags are not searched. Whatever you put in, we don't know. And these are some of the things you carry. As you pass, you may be using VVIP somewhere. The respect they give you when you have a diplomatic pass, because you are an envoy of your country. And so and you cannot be subject to the laws of that land. No. You can't be arrested and put before their laws. You cannot be forced to become a witness, you know, in a case in which you are just. But there are lacunas in that. You know, when we teach this thing, there was a time I set a question, for example, if an ambassador gives his car, which is a diplomatic car, to his daughter, driving and goes through the red, and the police accosted the person. And here is a young girl who is driving. It's against the law. He's gone through red. The chauffeur of the driver, could he be arrested? Could the ambassador be put under whatever it is? Can the girl be arrested? And these are some of the lacunas you ask yourself. If such infractions come, what do you do? So basically, let's be very careful as to whom we give the diplomatic passport to, because the least infraction using the diplomatic passport brings that kind of visibility onto the nation, as this one has clearly brought, whether it's true or not. At some other place when I was talking, I said we need to be very careful to see how these people defend themselves. I hear some people have gone there to argue their case out. So in dealing with this, we need to find out whether it's true what we are being told.
Does it damage the reputation of the nation, or is just we in the media who think, oh, it's big, but in international circles, they overlook it?
Well, the media, you know, we bite all the time. Now, let me bite a dog. It's big news, you know. Man bites a dog. When a dog bites a man, it's the usual thing. So the point, we have hyped it. But I'm telling you, there are several serious infractions of the use of the diplomatic passport. Several. people give their diplomatic passports to riffraffs on the street to sell their cocaine elsewhere. He's holding the diplomat, he flashes it. The police insult the person. Let me now talk. I'm a free person now. In Moscow, we drive our friends, the diplomats' cars, all right? And we know the language very well. There are you see a huge traffic, you want to dodge it, you take a one-way. Police arrest you. There was a time we were accosted. Then I told the people in the car, nobody understands Russian. Shut up, everybody. And everybody was quiet. I hope the Russian embassy over here is not listening to me. So the police car, document means bring your documents. And I was looking into his face. And I spoke into him, oh, now the document, and everybody was laughing. Because my people laughed, he was so furious. But he used his boot to bang the car and said, stupid black monkey, get away from here. Black monkey, I drove away. We all use infraction because it was a diplomatic car. There's nothing he could do it. I mean, he wouldn't do anything. I came back to my friend and I said, your car has been arrested. They will bring the ticket to the embassy. So these things are very, very important. We must be very careful as to what we do with the diplomatic passport. It's very, very important. It will bring shame when repeated, actions and like he is saying, you were saying, he said he was going to send it to other.
No, he actually.
Okay,
he actually
they have done it.
Stated in the body of
it must be part of the threat because the best to do is what he did. Actually, he spoke to the speaker, which is a great respect. Unlike how you were analyzing it, I believe that the language.
No, he didn't. No, and Prof, I want to react to what you have said.
Just basically, before you go there,
yeah.
I was saying, look, the best normally you do is to write to the Ministry of Foreign Affairs or go there personally and give your report. It ends there. But if you that he talks to the speaker in a diplomatic, that's why the speaker was worried that a thing we have spoken diplomatically and quietly now leaks out. But that he goes around sending it to other embassies, it's like you were saying, reporting to the international community, you know. But that he spoke to the speaker, for me, I don't think there's anything wrong.
I think we are on different meter bands.
Yes.
He did not speak, he wrote. He wrote an official letter dated 20th of January. And in that letter, he referred to something that the speaker had said strongly about diplomatic passports. Now, I think
Don't you think that is a plus to the speaker, rather? He was praising the speaker for talking about something.
Well, it might appear to be praising the speaker, but he was saying, oh, you know what? I heard you speaking so strongly about this thing, and I want to inform you, perhaps you don't know, that in fact a number of members of your house have actually been abusing.
That is the trick of diplomacy.
And in fact, if you looked at it, was a lengthy letter, and in part of it, he actually said, he even asked the speaker questions that, can you explain also, I'm not quoting him, why people still hold on to their diplomatic passports even after they have left parliament and so on. Prof, what I wanted to actually say, 2 points, basically. I agree so much with what you said about our own responsibility.
Right.
For instance, if any riffraff or Tom, Dick and Harry is holding a Ghanaian diplomatic passport, that is a problem the Ghanaian government must deal with. But we are talking about visa fraud. I believe it has a meaning. I don't know what it means. Right. I'm very careful. I don't know what the High Commissioner means by visa fraud. But apparently, it is people who have used diplomatic passports to come and acquire visas, I believe, on the basis of merit, personally. Because I have not read and seen anywhere that he has indicated a misrepresentation of people. Like that, you said this was your wife, but he's not your wife, and all that. But that basically, they came with their diplomatic passports, used them to acquire visas legitimately. But when they went, some of the people they went with ended up staying on, which is illegal, being in residence illegally in their country. You call that fraud? No. The fraud, I don't know whether it has to do with the visa acquisition. Because with the visa, excuse me, Prof, with the visa, even when you are given a visa, you are still told that it doesn't guarantee entry into the country.
Agreed, yes.
So you go on, you take a visa, I will call it legitimately, travel to a country, enter there, and because some of the people you took the visa with or for end up remaining in the country, label you as a person engaging in what do you call it, visa fraud. And then, of course, I don't have a problem with the issue of responsibility. That because you came and you have a diplomatic passport which gives you some privileges, we allowed you, and now you have, it appears, I use my words carefully, it appears that it has turned out to be an abuse. Now, some of them, like the daughter of one of the MPs says, well, she takes full responsibility for embarrassing her father because her father didn't even know that she was going to remain in the UK. What I'm saying is, and you use some words that I like, you say they use some of these tactics to force our governments to behave in a certain way. And that is where I come to the next point, which is about our own responsibility. I really think that we should, it is an opportunity for us to ask ourselves on our own part, when we send diplomats abroad, what do we send them for? I mean, what are our interests? The interests we are pursuing.
They have to defend the
and the strategies, tactics, and methods that we think these people must use to pursue those interests. I think that is something we need to do an in-house introspection on and not be blaming others for it. For instance, I ask myself, there have been, in recent times, a few instances where Ghanaian proposed diplomats have been refused or rejected by the countries where they were sent to.
Yes.
Because those countries thought that those individuals were a threat to whatever or a kind of danger to their... Do we do the same?
We do.
No, it's a research question, Dr. Prof.
I know.
It's a research question.
Let me come in over here.
Because I say this, let me learn. I say this because there are diplomats who have come into our country and other African countries and later written stories and made confessions about how they themselves use all kinds of methods, some of them unacceptable, undiplomatic.
Very good. That's why I was coming to.
And yet they use them, but they were praised by their governments. They served their governments well. I mean, people, Ghanaians may like John Benjamin or not, but I'm sure, I believe, not that I'm sure, the British government might be applauding him because he did what they sent him here to do.
Exactly. So you are asking, when they reject ours, they do background checks. As this ambassador is here, he is listed. That's why he is a friend to all kinds of people.
Of course.
Spying is part of every embassy. Now, we call something agreement. It's like agreement, but that is the diplomatic name. Once you send it, we send it down the Batidam to Nigeria and they know that once upon a time you may have whispered something wrong about Nigeria. It's enough to reject you. But that they won't blow it out. They say, sorry, as for this one. Or they know you are a very high spy who will be detrimental to their interests. No, they do this. If we don't do it and we ask them to bring everybody, it is our problem.
That I accept.
But in consular matters and in diplomatic matters, sending envoys, you got to do your due diligence, your check. You normally ask another country to be doing background checks for you. You ask another country to be spying for you. You ask another country, your friendly countries. Okay, they're sending this guy, so what do you think about him and that? So it's a mutual thing. We have been sending some ambassadors, and we sit down here in Ghana and say, oh, as for this ambassador, don't we say it, but they accept the person. Because it cuts two ways. We may say the person is a drunk, and they are bringing him. Maybe he's being a drunk. They know why. So these things, it's not for you and me. It's for our ministry, our government to be able to know who is coming. Why is it coming? Do we spy on them? Do we know what they do? What are they taking away? And things like that. When we were having oil, for example, a lot of the things that we did, the research work we did during Nkrumah's time, fell into the hands of all kinds of embassies. And so they come and they begin to tell us how much they want to give us. And you don't understand. Because we sold it to them. Either innocuously or whatever it is. Consular matters are mutual. What you do to me is what I do to you. It's mutually exclusive. You can...
It's supposed to be.
Ours seems a bit...
Mutually inclusive.
But ours seems a bit one way, though.
Yes.
No, I think to that extent, I think we are on the same platform, and I think we should be speaking more to ourselves and to our government and to our people, because also the reaction, I think that is an important dimension, and because in Ghana the media and other non-state actors play such an important role, I thought the reaction was a bit striking for me, that immediately as usual it played into our local politics, and I am sure the first thing was even to identify these MPs, are they MPP or NDC and all this stuff. But also I think we should look beyond that, because for me the posturing is important. I mean, there is some element of imperialist posturing in this structure. I mean, you talk about people, I think that it is not right, if I'm wrong you can correct me, for the High Commissioner of the UK to choose to write to the Speaker of our Parliament and distribute to
other embassies.
All other embassies
let's listen
and
to
other arms of government.
Let's listen to the Foreign Minister. That's a quick one. Listen to what
there should be sanctions. I mean, just as the minister can ask that a prominent citizen or a member of government or approve the issuance of a passport, I believe so can the minister also consider the withdrawal of a passport of somebody who has misused or abused the use of a passport. So that is something that can be done. But the matter that you're referring to is a matter that the letter that was written to the Speaker. I just want to find out, wait for the Speaker to come up with his findings, and then I will act on it, because then we'll have concrete evidence that this is what has happened, and give the members the opportunity to give their side of the story, although we know what it is. But I mean, due process must be followed.
Well, so that was the...
In all this, my worry seriously, whilst we are worried about how the diplomat has behaved, in our field, when somebody behaves that way, you ask yourself, what did you do and what didn't you do and what do you have to do? Why? Because, look, these consular matters are very serious. Very, very, very serious. Unfortunately, I don't think that in Ghana we understand the use of the diplomatic passport, and many more people would want to have either the diplomatic passport or the service passport to facilitate things for them instead of the essence of holding that passport. That's number one. Number two, every passport, your ordinary passport, does not belong to you, it belongs to the state.
Yeah.
And so remember that whatever you do with that passport, you are hurting the state or promoting the state. These things haven't gone down very well. And thirdly, the issuance processes. Have we streamlined them in such a way that we know whom we are giving it to?
I think ours is too wide, is it?
Come again?
Ours is too wide. Prominent people in society,
spouses and everybody. And then yesterday, I'm an entity, tomorrow I'm a prominent person. All of a sudden. As if I've checked all those kinds of things. Is it just because somebody is an MP that he becomes prominent? Fine, he's good. Yes, he's a lawmaker. And that is the more reason why they should be more careful as they hold diplomatic passport. How come that foreigners are holding our diplomatic passport? How come that alleged criminals are holding our diplomatic passport? These, for me, are the questions I will interrogate as a citizen, more than the behavior, because the behavior of John Benjamin, we can retaliate, because that's diplomacy. They will do even worse things to you.
I doubt. To be sincere with you, I doubt.
But let me show you. Let me show you. Retaliation doesn't mean you took this glass, so I'm going to take your glass.
No.
There are several ways. You deny the person something, and that they did it to us. Let me give you an example. I do not know, and up till now I've been asking questions, why a prominent person like Mr. Atua Hoy, here is a man, if you don't, the name alone, and I do not think he's a criminal, that at a point in time the American embassy decided to ridicule such a man. You remember?
That is the point.
And it was because of something. Later on, my analysis showed that it was because when the NDC came to power around that time, they started chasing Cosmos, looking into things, chasing this, and the American High Commissioner over here and the British High Commissioner then expressed dissatisfaction about how the Ghana government is going about it openly. Yeah. People didn't connect them. Few weeks later, they were telling this man that, oh, we have sent your request to the US. When the man was attending an early conference, I'm told, they denied him that when they say come for the visa, the conference must have been over, so he also refused to go for. It's a kind of punishment you won't understand.
I wouldn't call it punishment, Prof. I think where I agree with you is that, for me, and that is where the governance issue comes in. I think it can be a deliberate attempt to weaken our institutions. I mean, by already telling you that, look, while you have made this very strongly worded proclamation or declaration, I want to inform you that a lot of your or some of your people are already involved in this kind of thing. So in other words, they weaken you and preoccupy you with trying to, do the damage control of the fact. So you come to the negotiating table, even in diplomacy, as a weaker party. I think that there are rules even in war.
Oh, yes.
You will tell me that there are rules even in war. So if you come with, for instance, and I really want us to look at this thing content-wise.
But because
less than 2 weeks after a new government comes into office.
I want us to assess John Benjamin as a diplomat. He's been very active in local governance. I mean, Shatawali and Samini are having
is he more active than the earlier one, the one who went to Kazakhstan and I was told was asked to leave or so? The one.
Craig. But you see, Craig Murray has since been saying a lot of things. And that is why I'm saying that. You see, my problem is actually about us, not him. He's doing his job. I am sure if he was not doing what the British government wanted him to be doing, they would have called him back. Yes. So John Benjamin perhaps is an excellent diplomat in terms of the purpose and the interests of the UK in Ghana. I can cite personal examples, but I'm careful because I've just come out of office. You know, they push you. Last year, I was the representative of the government for the UK anti-corruption conference, that big conference that Cameron, his last major governance thing. And there were so many pushes here and there. Hey, Ghana, commit to this, commit to this. Yes. We said, no, we can't, because we don't even have the basic infrastructure to do this, that. Beneficial ownership. We did a lot of work. We spent time and put in place things to be able to make commitments. They say, okay, beyond that, sign on to GBOR. That is Global Beneficial Ownership Register.
That's right.
When we were in the US, or in the UK, calls from here in Ghana, from people I didn't know in London, were calling and saying, you know, is your president ready to sign this and all of that? You said something, they force you, but they don't force you. They don't really hold your hand.
And that's why I use my word like this.
But they use methods, some of which are, I don't know how to describe them. And to that extent, I think that it brings us, and for me, coming from the African Union, I am not looking at it only as a Ghana issue. I'm asking us, are we doing our own homework well? Are we looking at what are our interests? And if we are not pursuing our interests and others are pursuing them vigorously using all the legitimate and sometimes maybe not so legitimate methods, should we blame them?
Is it always about your economic strength?
Not necessarily. You know,
because that seems to be our position, that
your economic strength. I remember Kwesiyama writing a book, Power Without the Bomb. Nkrumah was so powerful that at that time that we didn't have the bomb, but Nkrumah was powerful in the international system. All right, we didn't have the bomb. He talks and what Batidam is saying, that is the essence of diplomacy. Look, one professor described diplomacy as or the diplomat is, or diplomacy as the ability to tell your opponent to go to hell.
Yes.
In such a manner that
he'll be happy. He'll be going.
He'll be waiting for. It's like looking forward to. And he may ask you, "What is the railway station? Where do I buy the ticket?" That ability. You are insulting the person, but it's the thing you were doing. I was going to ask you whether people didn't call and you brought yourself. That they were calling.
No.
Maybe your minister will even tell you.
Somebody would call.
As for this issue, let's vote for it.
Yeah.
It's just because diplomatically he's been promised something. Not he person, but the Ghana government has been promised something. Then you see in the United Nations, you say, oh, Ghana abstained. Even though Ghana may have led the onslaught. Then at the last minute, let me give you one example. In Denmark, and I was there, the African position on the global warming, what do you call that?
Climate change.
Climate change was not read. We were all there when the African position was very strong. That very evening, there was a big diplomatic party, the American mission. The following day, the Tanzanian ambassador, or yes, I think so, who was leading the African district. I went as a scholar, but they came as delegates. Fell ill. And then our position, who reads? On and on and on, our is still on the net. African position, not read. And then several other governments were abstaining. Several other delegates were abstaining from voting on the African issue. That is diplomacy. They've been able to tell us to go to hell in such a way that we are ready to go to that hell. That is diplomacy. So you know, whilst you are lamenting, I know the guy is doing his work. People were crying that the guy who is in Barcelona now, what do you call him? Suarez. Mm-hmm. Every Ghanaian is
they consider him as a personal enemy of Ghana.
But he's a hero. He's a hero.
He has to defend his team. He has to make sure that he don't score them. That is diplomacy.
All too soon. That's what time will allow us today. That's what time allows. I told you we're going to have all the perspective on this issue. Dr. Vladimir Nchidanso and Daniel Batidam, thank you very much. To you at home, thank you very much. And on the 3rd of May, which is Wednesday, Manasseh is launching his book, Letters to My Future Wife, at Christ the King Parish, right opposite the Flagstaff House. You must be there. Everyone who you know and have heard of is going to be there. I will be there, so you should be there on Wednesday. Letters to My Future Wife. It's my own brother, Manasseh Azuri Awene. Very interesting. And I always give you this number before I leave. And I know Doc has got one of the shirts. 024-366-2001. Tantis Fashions, they make my shirts for the show. 024-366-2001. So you should get yourself one. And they make, you know, male and female, so whoever, just give a call and have one. Tomorrow we're back to do this all over again. Thank you very much for watching.